As thought leaders, we collaborate with stakeholders to ensure adherence to ethical standards, better education for professionals, and to build market integrity. We are the leading voice for advocacy in the finance and investment industry in Nigeria. To partner with us or become our member, visit us at cfasociety.ng.org for more details. CFA Society Nigeria, making finance a force for good.
Exactly.
Good morning, everyone. Hope I can be. Sorry.
Can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this important session, the application of AI to investment management, largely. As we all know, the recent developments, or not so recent developments in AI technology has meant that so much money in terms of investment has been deployed into advancing that technology. And it changes everything we do from our daily lives. And more importantly, it is having significant impacts in our professional lives. Specifically, in the investment management industry, so many things are changing, which is why this topic is quite timely. And it speaks to the reality of the world today and the reality of our profession as investment manager. So we are hosting our speakers and the moderator who will be doing justice to this topic. And who else will be in a better position to handle this than Dr. Cheryl Ann Wilson, CFA. Just a bit of a background of Dr. Cheryl Ann Wilson. She's a finance and technology scholar with a rich blend of academic excellence, industry leadership, and research expertise. She's currently serving as a senior research affiliate at the CFA Institute and recently completed a PhD in business at Bentley University. Her research focuses on AI, big data, and data platform ecosystems, with a keen focus on their applications to finance and investments management. With decades of executive experience in investment banking across the Caribbean, including leadership roles at Citibank and Butterfield Bank, she seamlessly integrates industry expertise with cutting-edge academic research. A proud charter holder and an active contributor to the CFA Institute, Dr. Cheryl Ann seeks to bridge the gap between theory and practice, equipping the next generation of professionals with the tools to navigate an evolving financial and technology landscape. And we have our own Emmanuel Gomina, CFA, who will be moderating this session, especially the Q&A session, as we'll expect that this will be an interesting session and should be matched with a lot of questions from our members and the audience. As we have background, Emmanuel is a CFA charter holder who currently serves as the Assistant Vice President in Investment Banking Division of Chapel Hill, Denham. Previously, he worked as a Financial Control Officer in Budgeting and Strategy Unit at the Zenith Bank PLC. Emmanuel holds a Master of Business Administration from University of East London and a Bachelor of Arts from University of Ilorin. He possesses skills in financial analysis and modeling, specifically in Excel, scenario testing and simulation, data analysis and visualization, including Microsoft Power BI, structured query language, and business development and client advisory. So we expect this to be an interesting session, given the profile of the speaker and the moderator. And we'll expect that audience should take full advantage of this by sending in their question in the Q&A session, which we expect to be very rich. I also look forward to this session with real excitement, especially the relevance of the topic to realities of today's world. So I'll yield the stage to Dr. Cheryl Ann Wilson to take it further from here. Looking forward to having an exciting session with everyone.
Thank you very much for that rousing welcome, and thank you to the board of the CFA Society Nigeria for inviting me to speak on this topic today. So let me begin by sharing my PowerPoint slides. Can everybody see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So let me go down. This is basically the order in which the presentation is going to take. So I'm going to really start by saying like, why we thought it was important to undertake like a comprehensive study into the use of AI and big data technologies last year, and then pretty much cover our findings as a result of this study as we progress. So we found that, because AI technologies are evolving so rapidly and so dynamically in the industry, we thought that, it was pretty timely last year to conduct a comprehensive as well as an updated assessment of AI use, in the industry itself. And we did that by doing a mixed method study. So essentially, we had a global survey of investment professionals, and we combined that with a series of roundtables across regions as well as across different job roles. So the roundtable sessions we had specifically, they were executives, we had practitioners, and we had regulators, right? All given their input into what they saw were the key risks and challenges as well as opportunities for the use of AI in the industry. And the objective of this project was really to look at two things. To do specifically to get, as I say, a very in-depth understanding of how investment professionals use AI and big data technologies in their workflow activities. So like how they use them for data analysis, portfolio management, valuation, etc. Right? And then we also wanted to look at what were the key risks, challenges that impeded maybe the more widespread adoption of these technologies, as well as what were the opportunities provided by these technologies for the industry in terms of the firms as well as regulators as well. And I just want to say that this pretty much extends the work that we have already done in the area of AI, big data, and machine learning, as well as in our future of work series. So we had like the future of what the future investment professional would look like, what the future job role of the investment professional would look like. So it kind of extends work in that area as well. So I'm just kind of going to talk like really, really briefly about our key findings, because I'll kind of go into more depth as the presentation goes on. What we found basically, a couple of striking things was that even though Excel still remained the predominant technology of use across the globe, right? Across investment professionals, across all regions. So that, you found that at least 2/3 of investment professionals continue to use Excel. We also found at the same time that there was a gradual increase in the adoption of the other technologies like Python, GenAI, you know, technologies like that, Tableau, etc., across across all job functions, basically, there was this gradual increase. And in addition, we also found that rather than in the past where people used Excel, pretty much exclusively for everything that they did within a task, right? What we found here that what investment professionals were beginning to do was what I like to call a user multi-homing strategy, a best of both worlds user multi-homing strategy is what I like to call it. Because what they were doing now is that they were pretty much using the different technologies concurrently as they did a workflow activity. So no longer were you seeing people were using Excel and then maybe combining it with manual stuff. They were using, say, the particular technology that was best suited for the phase of the workflow that they were in, right? So that they might use, say, Python or Tableau for data visualization rather than Excel, or they would use Python for data analysis and for like data retrieve, not data retrieval, but like for pretty much data collection, right? For the big heavy tasks that Excel couldn't do. And also too, we found that by region in general, regionally, as well as even across occupations, these tools were primarily being used for like data analysis, data visualization, and to a somewhat less extent for financial modeling and for risk management activities. So I wanted to talk a little bit about technological intensity. So what we wanted to do as well was to say, well, look, we wanted to really assess the degree to which, not just that they were using it, but the degree to which investment professionals were already using these technologies, right? So we created a technology intensity matrix to reflect that. And that matrix really looked at two things based together, right? Which is the percentage of individuals that are actually using a particular technology, say Python or GenAI or whatever, in their workflow activities, right? So that was the usage rate, as well as how often they were using it, whether they were using it, as they say here, the percentage of people who were using it daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly. And then when you look at this matrix here, the greater than or equal to sign really reflects the frequency of use, right? So greater than or equal to would mean that people were using the technology at least on a weekly basis. So that will include people who were also using it daily. And then the less than or equal to sign under here at the lower level of intensity reflects people who were using it at most on a monthly basis. So it would also include people who were using it quarterly as well. Right. So these are the quadrants that we developed based on those two things, components. And using the technology intensity matrix, what we found was that overall, and this is like across all regions, etc., that technological intensity, we characterized it as moderate because we found that, as you can see here, the overall usage rate fell within a moderately low quadrant, so that any technology, really, any of these technologies here, GenAI, SQL, Python, etc., really fell within, were used mostly by between 20% to 39% of respondents, that range, right? And they were also used but before I go to the other part, the frequency, I just also wanted to kind of maybe highlight here that this graph also gives you a sort of a picture of what I was talking about in terms of the multi-homing, right? So for example, you would see for data analysis, right? Python was being used as well as the other one would be like SQL and to a lesser extent like Tableau, etc. But they were using it. Sorry, bear with me. I'm trying desperately to get over a flu here and it threatens me every minute, every now and then with a terrible cough. Yeah. So you found out, or maybe even the data visualization is probably a better example. Even more striking example, I should say, because you can see here, Python and other visualization technologies are being used pretty much almost equivalently for data visualization tasks, right? And this graph doesn't include Excel and because, you know, what we were looking at was the future technologies, not really. We weren't really trying to focus too much on the technologies that people are using by default in the past, right? Or continue to use Excel. So it wouldn't include Excel in this analysis, but you can see here that they were using, say, as I say, Python. So they may have been using Python, one of Python's libraries to create graphs and charts, as well as using, say, Power BI or Tableau to create dashboards, for example. So this is what I mean by multi-homing. Okay, so yeah, so the usage rate was moderately low, but we found that the frequency of use was high. So like more than 2/3 of investment professionals were using these technologies daily or weekly. So that is why, because it fell kind of within a moderately low and a moderately high quadrant, we characterize the overall technological intensity as moderate. And we also looked at the usage rate across 6 career zones, right? As you can see here, advisory, analytical, investment decision making, leadership, risk and oversight, as well as sales and client management. And we found that, as I mentioned earlier, that data analysis was and data visualization, etc., and the other two were really the ones that were used mostly by investment professionals. But as you can also see here, data analysis among these newer technologies, then data analysis was used by about 5 of the 6 work groups. And within those 5 or 6 work groups, Python was primarily the technology of choice for data analysis. I also wanted to show you this other view of it as well, because what we did, we strive to be a think and do tank, right, at the RPC. So what we did is that we created an interactive heat map as an adjunct or an addendum to the report, creating value from big data report. So that there is a link under the when you go to and you look at the report, you will pull up the report, you will see that there is a link under the report link that would, if you click it, would take you to our GitHub page, our GitHub repository. And here's where we have this interactive heat map that really shows the extent to which a particular job group is using these technologies across each of we have like about 20 workflows that we ask professionals to rate their use of these technologies across, right? So in the GitHub page, what you would do, you would be able to click a drop-down box for each of the job categories, and it will kind of show you, well, okay, this is the extent to which people are using Excel versus we have here market databases, Python, etc. But I just kind of put two static snapshots to kind of show you guys what, the heat map does. So for example, you can see here for the analytical job group, people are using the Python platform, like about 46% are using it for data analysis, 54% are using it for data visualization. But they're also using other data visualization technologies for the visualization and as well as for analysis. And then also too, you can see there's a certain, a fair percentage of people who are using SQL for data analysis as well. So this kind of tells you the darker the color blue is the greater extent to which people are using the technology in per workflow. And just a contrast, I wanted to show you guys the sales and client management job role. You can see here that, well, sales and client management seem to be using other visualization technologies quite heavily for, say, data visualization. And it kind of makes sense because, they would probably be using it for that to create dashboards so that they can present their products and stuff to clients, right? So that's really what I wanted to show as well. And this is a kind of a snapshot of the usage rate by region. And this region, this is Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. And as you can see here again, the technologies, the workflows for which the technologies will be used the most would be, again, data analysis, visualization, and to a lesser extent, risk management and financial model building. We also want to kind of look at how, the generative AI technologies like ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, and Bloomberg GPT and Microsoft Copilot were being used by investment professionals. And what we found was that, ChatGPT was the outstanding technology in terms of choice, like by far. And not only overall, as you can see here, but also too, it was used by more than 70% of people, of individuals, even when we looked at it from an age group or generation perspective. We looked at it by region and we looked at it across occupations. It was clearly the number one choice in terms of generative AI technologies. So then, as I mentioned earlier, we also looked at, what were the organizational issues relating to the use of AI and big data technologies? And that includes, what did survey holders see? And for some of the questions, what did the roundtable participants see as the key risks, challenges, as well as opportunities as well for AI and big data use? So when we asked survey respondents what best described their firm's experience in using the technologies, what we found was that for just over 20% of firms, while there was no they weren't currently implementing AI and big data technologies, they were actually had development or procurement of these technologies planned for the near future, or in process. In addition to which, we found that just under 1/5 of them had no applications planned for the moment at the moment, and then also too, we had about 1/5 of them who said that the applications were actually being developed independently at some business units. So there was what I would like to say characterized as a more fragmented approach to implementation and development of these applications. And that's kind of supported by the fact that about 9%, only 9% of respondents said that they actually had a cohesive and integrated approach to implementation of these technologies, like across all business units, etc., at the same time. So when we looked at what were the top 3 challenges to adopting AI and big data technologies in firms, specifically looking at the EMEA region, we found that like 42%, as you can see here, quoted like the skills gap, which is the shortage of the talent and training in terms of like a hybrid skill set. So there's a shortage of people who have expertise in both computer science as well as investment management. Right? So that's what this 42% refers to. People were either finance oriented or specifically computer oriented, and that kind of problem continues. Then we found that 37% considered data quality and governance issues to be a big challenge as well. And these first two challenges were actually the same challenges cited by respondents in both the Americas as well as the Asia Pacific. Where it differed was in the challenge number 3. So for EMEA, for the EMEA region, it was really the lower level of integration between business and technology functions was considered a challenge to widespread adoption, whereas for the other 2 regions, it was the legal and regulatory development, right? That's what they cited. And then when we looked at organizational risks, again, the first 2 risks were pretty much consistent across all regions. So a key concern, and this concern was also cited as a key risk among roundtable participants as well. And I'm talking about the what we call the black box issue, the fact that the technologies are evolving and are becoming so complex, using like what we refer to as deep learning algorithms, or based on deep learning algorithms, which allows the AI system to really execute very complex tasks and complex operations, but it comes at the cost, I should say, not the risk. It comes at the cost of the being able to understand the output, sometimes why the system is providing a recommendation or giving the output that it is giving, right? So it comes at the cost of interpretability or explainability. So that's really the black box issue, and that people felt was a key risk that prevented widespread adoption, right? Greater adoption, I should say. And as well as the second one was the protection of data privacy, another big concern shared by all. In terms of the third one, again, we saw a little bit of a divergence. For the EMEA region, this was shared equally, this concern. 33% of people said reliance on third-party members and operational risks were both, concerns, organizational risks, right? Whereas for the Americas and the APAC region, they considered compliance risk to be more of a concern. And then just in general, we wanted to find out, what did respondents think their firms would be doing in the face of this digital transformation then to adapt and so on. And, most of them thought the top 3 ones were like, they would continue to automate their existing work processes and upskill existing employees, which is, pretty much tracks with the fact that of that skills gap. So that is the way they would seem to be. They thought that their firms would approach attempted to close that skills gap. And then the other one was like making AI and data analytics a key focus. And we kind of also went a little further into it because we also asked them in another way, well, like, okay, how likely is your firm to use one of 4 talent development pathways? And again, the general consensus across the regions was that, firms would be more inclined to upskill their staff versus outsourcing or hiring new people or hiring experienced professionals. And I guess that speaks to the fact that, there's a certain amount of expertise that you already have from an investment practitioner perspective already embedded within your existing staff. It's just kind of easier to upskill them on the technology side rather than, bring in somebody who may maybe have the technology expertise or experience, but they don't really know that much about the investment industry. So we also kind of asked practitioners from their own perspective, whether they thought AI would enhance, would more enhance or more replace their existing job functions. And most of them, as you can see here, no, sorry, not most of them. They felt that the AI would enhance like more than about at least 50% or more of their job functions. And to a lesser extent, they would replace their job activities. And I believe that this sort of reflects the sentiment that um, the AI would probably replace, routine job tasks, right? So that they would more automate routine job tasks. But by so doing, what they would be doing would be to free investment professionals to focus on more higher level tasks that the AI at this point in time does not have the capability of doing. And one thing would be like anything that involves like interaction with clients and stuff like that, right? Trust building and dealing with your clients and so on. And, the sentiment was similar across regions as well as across job groups, as you can see here. We also wanted to find out how would the practitioners respond to these potential job changes that they saw being brought by AI, right? And in general, about at least 75% of professionals felt overall that they would choose to develop their technical skills and then, to a lesser extent, develop their soft skills. But for the EMEA region, the percentage was higher than the overall, right? Because it's like 83% of EMEA professionals said that they would opt to develop their AI skills, right? Which is higher than the overall and also higher than the 72% that was cited for the Americas as well as the Asia Pacific regions. So we also wanted to know, well, okay, given that you're going to upskill, enhance your technical skills, right? Your AI skills. What were the areas people were most interested in developing their skills? And as you can see here, the top ones were like generative AI, data science, data visualization, other data visualization. And this, we told them that this would include technologies like Tableau and Power BI, and then lastly, Python programming. And these 4 areas are also the areas where there's the greatest gap in terms of the skills gap. Then there's the largest skills gap. And we had also asked people to identify their proficiency in terms of these skills as well, to just kind of make a comparison. And as you can see here, the proficiency in using AI technologies in general is quite low. There is really in no area is the proficiency higher, the reported proficiency higher than 10%. And then finally, we ask people, and this was a question for roundtable participants, what they saw as the opportunities, right? And like two key things I wanted to kind of just throw out here was that that came up was that the whole idea of collaboration that is being enhanced through AI, collaborative innovation. Because like in the past, institutions would have relied heavily on Excel-based systems, and these systems tended to be siloed. So for example, you would have different worksheets and stuff being used at different teams by different teams and so on. It led to a little bit of inconsistency in terms of the data, right, for the organization. So with the introduction of cloud-based systems like Python, the Python platform, that kind of offered a more reliable solution, right? So that it enabled the recording of everybody's input, right? And it also allowed people to get sort of like continuous kind of feedback. So that, for example, analysts and portfolio managers could refine their forecasts and decisions iteratively using these cloud-based systems, and kind of enable the leveraging of what is the collective expertise of the organization to track accuracy and so on of the forecast. The other big area was in like the whole issue of the human AI sort of interaction, right? The AI could, by automating human intensive but pretty routine tasks, right? What it did was to allow people to, as I say, focus on higher development tasks. So for example, the AI could be used to streamline client onboarding processes, right? And then that would allow the professionals to focus on the activities that require the human touch, right? So for example, problem solving, developing and cementing relationships with your clients and so on. And this kind of also creates opportunities for early career professionals to develop their soft skills as well. As I said, one of the participants noted that the AI cannot foster trust, right? So the ability to connect with people and communicate effectively would become increasingly important. And with this, I just want to stop here and take any questions and that we have from the broader audience.
Yeah, thank you, Dr.
You're welcome.
And Wilson, for the detailed presentation. So I'll allow Emmanuel Gomina to take it further here with the question and answer session.
Thank you very much, Razak, and good afternoon, everyone. So we'll take questions from people who want to put your questions on the chat. Alternatively, you could also raise your hand if you want to speak, and then the floor will be yielded to you to ask your questions. Okay, so I have a question from Lydia. Lydia says, thank you so much for the presentation. What were the main techniques or methods that were used to collect the information?
Okay, so yeah, so what we we used a cross-sectional survey, and that was administered to a random sample of our membership. A large enough sample, but it wasn't the entire membership, but a sample of the global membership of CFA members, which would include charter holders as well as candidates, right? So that was one of the main main methods of data collection, but we also supplemented it by conducting about 10 roundtable sessions. And the way we did these sessions is that we held sessions specific groups. And it was specifically 3 groups. So we had these sessions with executives. So we had sessions with that group. We also had sessions with practitioners, the practitioner group, as well as we had sessions with the regulators across the globe, right? And those roundtable sessions were conducted under what we call the Chatham House rule, not what is the Chatham House rule, which enabled them to speak freely on condition that, their names and their organizations, etc., would not be disclosed in the report.
Thank you, Chair.
You're
We
welcome.
have another question from testimony. She says, considering the potential for algorithmic bias in the training data and continuous operation of AI systems used for investment analysis and decision making, what specific legal or regulatory mechanisms exist or are being considered within the global or perhaps even Nigerian financial sector to address liability and ensure accountability when such biases lead to discriminatory investment outcomes or financial detriment for certain classes of investors? So she wants to know the regulatory, she's coming from the regulatory perspective. What are the things that happen, consequences for mistakes and all?
Well, I'm sorry to say that at this point in time, there really isn't any regulation or any written policy across the different regulations that address algorithmic bias. I mean, there is a big concern with it, right? So, data privacy, data quality, but data privacy, etc., right? There is that concern. But as yet, there is no regulation that speaks to that addresses, that issue of algorithmic bias. And I think that's because the issue of algorithmic bias is a very thorny issue. It is a problem, right? But it is a problem that is probably very difficult to address, and therefore, if it's difficult to address, I think regulators are kind of, trying to wrap their heads around, this is my assumption, wrap their heads around how can you regulate for a problem that is so difficult to address without hampering innovation in the sector. That is kind of, I guess, the dilemma that they are facing. I do know that, for example, I mean, and this is not from a regulatory point of view, but there is this recognition that among practitioners that, for example, as I say, these complex models, like, for example, like the ChatGPT and so on, that are based on large language models, they can produce what's called hallucinations, which is essentially a way of saying the data that they could give you is wrong, right? And that's a real issue, right? So the focus there would be to try to ensure that the data, you're getting the data from a you're training the model then on data that is as accurate as possible, that does not contain inconsistencies, or does not, that does not contain inconsistencies, and therefore you don't end up in a situation where it's garbage in, garbage out. But that process is ongoing, because I can tell you, even from my experience, even now, I mean, sometimes I use ChatGPT, and sometimes it absolutely gives you something that is wrong. And, when I come back and I say, this is wrong, and it says, okay, I'm sorry, and it would correct it, right? And so that you have to be very careful, I think, when you're using technologies like that, because you always have to double check your source, verify your source, verify your citations, ask it for citations and verify it, etc.
There's a three-pronged question from Olufemi Akinrotimi. He would want to know what the population and sample size considered in the study was. Also, please, can you shed more light if there was any inferential statistics performed? If yes, can you share with us what the analysis was?
Oh, okay. I could answer the first question. I didn't quite get the second one. Share the
Oh, it
what?
said, can you shed more light if there was any inferential statistics performed? If yes, can you share with us what the analysis was?
Oh, inferential statistics? No. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, mm, no, we didn't. I don't think we did any inferential statistics. I mean, if he could be more specific in terms of what he means by that, but I would say I don't think so. In terms of the sample size, we had like about 50,000, and the response rate was like 0.2 to about 1%. And that is because not every question needed to be answered by everyone, right? So for example, we would have asked people what technologies they use on the job, right? And I know for certain questions, trying to remember, for certain questions, if you didn't use a technology, it would address a particular technology, it wouldn't refer to you. Or for example, like for GenAI, that's a good example. For people who said that only people who said that they use GenAI technologies would have been given questions relating to that, right? And there were a couple other questions like that, but yeah, from the technology side, the responses kind of varied, basically. Oh, and the other thing would be like, even though people use technologies on a job, not everybody would use the technology for the same type of task. So they all had to identify which were the tasks that they used for their job, but not every work group would, of course, use all of the different workflows that we had listed, right? So that created that reduced the subset of people who could answer a question in terms of like, okay, for this activity, what technologies you used, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, and so,
Thank
and
you, Doctor.
if you can be more specific about inferential, I'd be happy to kind of look at that again, but I would say for this moment, no.
He's come back. He said, I mean, was there any regression analysis to understand the relationship between variables being understudied, or it was just descriptive statistics that was used?
Yes, for this particular study, it was just descriptive.
Thank you. There's a question from Nadeja Motosha, which I think I find interesting. I'm curious to know if there is any insight or data on the actual impact or improvement metrics upon adoption of these AI tools. Was there data collected for us to know how it improved people's roles and their productivity?
No, we did not ask. From what I'm understanding, the question is, did we ask people, okay, before you did this, improve your ability to do X job or Y job? A question like that. No,
Yes.
we didn't get into into that question. While that was a question that was of interest to us, we were very mindful that we had to restrict the number of questions we could ask, because you when you're doing surveys, you always have to I think tread the role between comprehensiveness and really participant fatigue, right? When people see too long a survey, they tend to kind of like say, oh no, and stop. So it's either incomplete or sometimes they just don't even bother to answer it. So what we did is we tried to ask questions that we thought would be of more general value and use at the within this perspective of the survey. But that could be something, I guess, that we may look at. We may or may not be able to maybe look at in future surveys, to kind of compare, yeah, how it affected their work, yeah.
All right, thank you. One question from Larry Oreni. How can one bridge the gap of the past versus the future, since AI information / statistic may largely be historical, and the objective of investing is to make gains in the future?
So what some practitioners are doing, and these are the ones, I guess, who in areas where they're using things like Python and stuff, right? They tend to be they're able to create models that allow them to do forecasting. So they're using it they're building predictive models to kind of help them in their allocation decisions, in their trading decisions, etc. That's being used. So AI is being used in that way. It's not and I guess, yes, you're still using to the extent that, you're still using it. The model is still being based on, or being trained, I should say, on historical information, right? But there's also the element that you can you could always you're always revising or updating the model with information as current as you can get it, right? So to help you with your forecast and your predictive analysis and so on. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
For me, I think it does, but we expect her to come back. The
Okay.
final question is from Lukman Abdul Salam, and he wants to know, how does the institute ensure that candidates master foundational principles, even with the inclusion of AI?
Oh, sorry, can you repeat that question? I didn't.
How does the institute ensure that candidates master foundational principles, even with the inclusion of AI?
All right. So, in the CFA program now, right, we also have modules that include Python. So that's what we're doing, right? So there's a Python module that candidates can have exposure to within, I think, level 1, level 2. I'm not sure if level 3 as yet. So that's one way. In addition to which, we do have other certificates that we that we have that we in the process that we have actually available, and also in the process um of in the process of rolling out, right? So there's going to be one that's going to be focusing on data science, right? Upcoming. We also have what else do we have in terms of technology? The Python modules that and the data science that we're going to be rolling out on an upgraded version of that as well is what comes to mind currently that I could think of. Yeah. But yeah, the institute is always kind of looking at ways in which it could incorporate technology into its programs as well for the benefit of the candidates.
Thank you. Lukman, I might also add that existing members also have access to the Python module. So you can also develop yourself, and I think it counts as a peer point for you. So you can also develop yourself in the process.
Exactly.
Yeah. Finally, from Dr. Godson Ero, how concerned should practitioners be in using these emerging technologies to avoid benumbing their analytical minds, but only see them as enablers?
Sorry, Manuel. Can you repeat that?
Okay, how concerned should practitioners be in using these emerging technologies to avoid benumbing their analytical minds, but only see them, the technology, as enablers?
So how the emerging technologies is what the
How concerned should practitioners be in utilizing the emerging technologies
okay.
to avoid clouding their own mind, their own analytical minds, but only see the tools, see them as enablers, as tools, rather than decision makers, I guess.
Right. Yes, I understand what he's asking. Yeah, so I think, there is this phenomenon called algorithmic appreciation, right? Which really speaks to what this audience member was asking, which really speaks to the fact that people tend to trust the recommendations or the output of the AI over that of, say, another professional or their own expertise, right? So there is that, right? I would say to counteract that would be to always be mindful, keep foremost in your mind that, this technology is going to be used to support whatever decisions you make, rather than provide you with an answer to a particular question, or provide you with the decision that you could blindly trust. Because, as I say, the technology is not such that the technology is such that errors can propagate, right? Because it depends on how it's been trained, and as another audience member talked about, there's also the idea of importing these algorithmic biases, because they're being trained by people who may have biases, etc., etc. So I would think is just to be very mindful, keep uppermost in your mind that this is supposed to help you rather than direct you into executing a task. It's supposed to kind of make things easier. So, automate stuff that you really don't need to be doing mindlessly. But, the more important things, you kind of allows you to do more important things that require the human element. You always have to keep, as they say, the human in the loop, essentially.
Exactly. Thank you very much. I think we've come to the end. Our time for questions are up. Wilson, to your question, I think she already spoke to it. The practical skills module is available for you. There are things that help to build your skills. For that, we can take more than this, and then I'll hand over to Dr. Odiri for our closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much to Dr. Wilson for that brilliant and beautiful presentation. I think you can all agree with me that the data speaks a lot and tells a very beautiful story. I took a lot of notes, so I'll just share a couple of, maybe one or two things that I noted. I don't know for us, how many of us saw the heat map? From that heat map, you can see that a lot of people are still more like addicted to the Excel. Even though they're using the other tools, but the Excel platform had a higher percentage of users. And for me, that was really interesting, but it says a lot, but I believe that probably in the next couple of years, we'll begin to see people more comfortable with the other tools. Another thing I picked on, which for me was also very interesting, is the fact that there is this debate that AI will probably take over the role of investment manager or investment professional. But I like the sentiment, where a lot of people still believe that AI is more like a complement, will not necessarily, take up their job. It can replace the routine tasks, but, gives the investment manager the opportunity to focus on more strategic roles or activities. So I really like the sentiment on that. And then the third thing I picked out, which I also wanted to emphasize, is the need for us to develop our AI skills as investment professionals. And you can see that one of the major challenge, that is being raised is the fact that there is a shortage of talent. So the onus is on us now. The charge has been given to us that we need to develop our skills. And I like what the CFA Institute is doing and incorporating this also into the curriculum and into the exam. So for those of us who qualified years ago, almost a decade ago, is for us to go back, and begin to reskill and upskill and ensure that we are also conversant, with the AI tools and how to use it. And then lastly, for me, one of the biggest key takeaway for me is really, in this meeting, we have people at different stage of their career, those who are just starting out. We have senior portfolio managers, and we also have leaders in the investment management profession. For those starting out, you are like in the easy stage, because now it's easy to learn and pick up these skills with ease, and build on it, as you grow. For those of us who are leaders in the industry, the onus is on us to ensure that we train our investment professionals, take a lot of courses. And if we need any support, the Society office is available to support us. The replay will be available, and will be shared with everyone once it's available. And somebody also asked if the slide, the presentation slide will be available. We also share that. And if there are questions, additional questions that were not answered there, you can send that also to the Society office. We'll get Dr. Wilson to also respond to that, which we'll also share to everyone. So thank you very much. First, Dr. Wilson, it was indeed an eye-opener for us all. And also thank you to all our participants and for making it very interesting. I really like the questions that were coming up. It just shows that we're also listening and, we paid attention. So thank you very much for giving us this time, to also share this knowledge with you. I think we are still early in the day, so I would say have a interesting day ahead. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Enjoy it.
We are professionals.
Bye.
We are impact driven. We are CFA Society Nigeria, a member society of the CFA Institute Global Network of Societies. Our mission is to promote the highest standard of practice in the Nigerian financial services industry and provide a vibrant community for our members. The CFA Charter signals the holder's commitment to professional excellence. As thought leaders, we collaborate with stakeholders to ensure adherence to ethical standards, better education for professionals, and to build market integrity. We are the leading voice for advocacy in the finance and investment industry in Nigeria. To partner with us or become our member, visit us at cfasocietyng.org for more details. CFA Society Nigeria, making finance a force.